Bournemouth murder nobody saw coming. 12th March 2022, Saturday, 4:44 a.m., Bournemouth town. He was a hero, a young man trying to keep the peace with his whole life ahead of him. His killer? A wanted double murderer who tricked the British government into believing he was a 14-year-old schoolboy. This is the story of how the system failed and how an innocent man paid the highest price imaginable. The victim and background. Thomas Roberts was 21 years old. He lived in Bournemouth, worked full-time as a precision engineer, and had recently begun training for a future in the Royal Marines. He wasn't just considering the idea. He was committed. Friends and family described him as someone with focus, discipline, and a clear sense of direction. Outside of work, his passion was music. He DJ'd under the name Nomad and played at local events. He wasn't chasing recognition. He simply loved the music. For him, it was a way to unwind and stay connected with his friends. His life wasn't chaotic or unstable. He had a long-term girlfriend, steady work, and plans for the future. Those who knew him said he had a calm way of handling situations. He didn't raise his voice or act impulsively. If people around him lost control, he'd stay composed. He was the sort of friends turned to when things got heated, not because he was intimidating, but because he could bring things back down. There was no pattern of violence in his life. He had no criminal record, no involvement in anything that would have put him at risk. On the night it happened, he'd been out in town with a close friend. We will talk about it later in this video, but he didn't know the man they came across. There was no history between them, no argument that had carried over from earlier in the night. Everything that unfolded happened within moments of that brief encounter. One thing is sure. He hadn't planned to get involved in anything or wasn't out looking for trouble. He stepped forward because something didn't feel right, and that decision made in seconds cost him his life. Defendant's background. Langjin Abdul Rahima Zai entered the UK in December 2019. He arrived at the port of Poole and claimed asylum, telling officials he was a 14-year-old orphan from Afghanistan, fleeing the Taliban. And that was enough. No birth certificate, no proof of who he was. That claim was accepted without formal challenge. He was placed into the care of social services as a minor. In reality, he was an adult. The court later confirmed he was born on September 7th, 2001, making him 18 at the time he arrived. The lie went unchallenged for years. There were no biometric checks, no age assessment, no effort to verify his identity through European databases. And without those checks, no one in the UK knew that Abdul Rahimi was already wanted for a double murder. In Serbia, 2 Afghan men had been shot dead with a Kalashnikov rifle following a dispute over human smuggling. Abdul Rahimi was named as the gunman, but he fled the country before he could be arrested. In his absence, a Serbian court tried and convicted him, sentencing him to 20 years in prison. He later traveled through Norway, where he was also convicted of a violent offense, then to Italy, where he was caught dealing drugs. He used different identities along the way. Once in Britain, the pattern continued. He was placed with a foster family and enrolled in secondary school and treated as a vulnerable refugee child. At one point, he was living alongside children as young as 11. His behavior quickly raised concerns. He became known for aggressive outbursts and paranoia. But concerns began to surface. Like teachers noticed violent outbursts, foster carers described him as aggressive and unpredictable, and prone to emotional swings. On social media, he posed with long knives and machetes, images later shown in court. When questioned, he said it was just for show, to gain followers. And just 2 days before the killing, a shop assistant reported seeing him with a machete. Police were informed. Officers tried to attend his home, but didn't get access. No warrant was issued, no further action taken. Each agency, immigration, police, social care, had part of the picture, but no one joined the dots. He was still seen by social services as a vulnerable teenager. No one knew he had killed before, and no one realized he was on the brink of doing it again. The confrontation. It was just before 4:44 a.m. on the 12th of March, 2022. Bournemouth monster hiding in plain sight. Bournemouth murder nobody saw coming. 12th March, 2022. Saturday, 4:44 a.m. Bournemouth town. He was a hero, a young man trying to keep the peace with his whole life ahead of him. His killer? A wanted double murderer who tricked the British government into believing he was a 14-year-old schoolboy. This is the story of how the system failed and how an